Joining us now, former Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush, Karl Rove. Karl, your reaction to the escalations in Syria and the carefulness. I mean, again, this goes back to your experiences with the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, at least the care and patience that we might be using here to verify the use of these chemical weapons.
Well, first of all, time is not on our side in verification. This is this particular agent, chlorine gas, tends to dissipate, and the traces can be wiped away by the passage of time. That's why the Russians were so intent upon stopping international inspectors to come together. It's almost laughable that Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, would say the things that he says after they have vetoed a measure at the United Nations which would put international inspectors in immediately. But look, the administration is approaching this patiently. They're approaching it thoroughly. They are doing the right thing and reaching out to allies. Already the French and the United Kingdom have let the United States know that they will act in concert if action is required. And they're backing it up. On the 11th, the battle group Harry S. Truman, the aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman, with several cruisers, 4 additional destroyers, an Ohio-class submarine, and interestingly enough, a specialized German vessel, which is one of the most effective air defense vessels in the world, is accompanying the battle group to the eastern Mediterranean. So there'll be a lot of firepower there, and not only firepower to deliver missile strikes on Syrian military installations, but also the ability to protect the vessels from the Russians are saying if you attack Syria and one of our people gets killed, then we're gonna attack back. So they're taking a lot of precautions on this one.
Karl, it is worth pointing out that it was the Obama administration, the previous administration, then Secretary of State John Kerry, who brokered a deal with the UN rather than take military action after the red line was crossed. They put Russia in charge of being the deal's guarantor that was inked at the UN to remove these chemical weapons. And John Kerry even had the gumption, if you will, to go on national TV and say 100% of the weapons have been removed from Syria. So this is, again, the fact that Russia plays a role in this is in part related to the previous administration's mistakes. Oh,
absolutely, absolutely. Look, it was President Obama who said originally, if Syria uses chemical weapons on its own people, it crosses a red line. And then when they did use chemical weapons, not once, not twice, but on numerous occasions, the United States response was weak and feckless. And interestingly enough, in 1972, the Russians were kicked out of the Middle East by their last client relationship, Egypt. And they came back in with Syria, and the action by Secretary Kerry in giving them a formal role in helping supposedly get rid of the gas supplies of the Syrian government sort of formally acknowledged that the Russians have a role to play in the Middle East, and they're not acting on our behalf. They're acting contrary to our interests and the interests of our allies in the region because that's their goal and that's their mission, not because it's accidental.
I want to move on to a possible presidential pardon. Fox News is reporting that President Trump is likely to pardon Louis Scooter Libby today. He's the former chief of staff to Vice President Dick Cheney. Libby was convicted of lying to the FBI and obstruction of justice in connection with the Valerie Plame's name being leaked to the press. Libby's sentence was commuted by your former boss, and do you think this is a good move? Because I can connect this case to Jim Comey, the big Boy Scout who is humping a book, and the kind of excess and abuse of power that you saw even by Jim Comey even before he became the FBI director.
Yeah. Well, for a minor correction, I don't think Scooter was guilty of obstruction of justice.
Okay.
It was lying to federal officials.
Okay.
And look, I have personal knowledge of this. You may remember that Jim Comey appointed John Ashcroft recused himself because I had been John Ashcroft's campaign consultant in previous races. James Comey appointed Patrick Fitzgerald, the U.S. attorney in Chicago, to investigate the Valerie Plame matter. The day that he walked into that job, Patrick Fitzgerald knew that Valerie Plame's name had not been leaked to Robert Novak by either Scooter Libby or me, and also knew that the person who had leaked it former Undersecretary of State Richard Armitage had not violated any law when he did leak the name to Valerie Plame to Robert Novak, and yet for years he was intent upon getting a pelt. He went after me, and he went after Scooter, and he got Scooter, and Scooter was ill-treated by the justice system, ill-treated, in my opinion, by his lawyers, who did, I thought, a terrible job on his behalf. But this is the difference between, I think, Bob Mueller, who I think is not out after a pelt. He's going to do what he's going to follow where the facts lead him, as opposed to Patrick Fitzgerald, who was intent upon getting somebody, indicting somebody, having something to show for the tens of millions of dollars and years that he spent trying to get to the bottom of this thing. And Jim Comey was right there at the beginning. I remember the news conference where he proclaimed that Patrick Fitzgerald would never have to come for him for anything, not even for his budget, not even for paper, for paper supplies and Post-it notes. Fitzgerald full speed ahead, and a good man was hurt badly in this, and it shouldn't have happened.
This is one example, Karl, of literally how Jim Comey and an abuse of power ruin people's lives. By the way, I don't know if that press conference when Jim Comey was standing up there all those years ago that he talked about Patrick Fitzgerald as being the godfather of one of his children and the inherent conflict of interest that was in that. But again, I hope that he gets, as he's out humping this book, taking pot shots at our current president, I hope that he's asked about some of this, a higher loyalty. His loyalty is to himself. And I don't know if they should go back that far. But again, I can go to Frank Quattrone, the prosecution of Scooter Libby. By the way, it was Fitzgerald's investigation. Judith Miller at the New York Times at the time was in jail for 85 days because she wouldn't give up her sources.
Well, and as you know, Judith Miller later testified that she'd been misled by the prosecutors, and she had evidence that was exculpatory to Scooter Libby that she realized that she had after the fact. But let's stay in the here and now for a minute.
Yes.
Jim Comey, and to my mind, did something very dangerous and very wrong in July of 2016 when he took it upon himself to make the determination that Hillary Clinton shouldn't be charged. Since the beginning of our country, we have divorced the prosecutorial decision from the investigatory action. We've said the police will investigate a crime, and it will be up to the prosecutors to decide whether or not charges should be applied. Well, he was in charge of the investigation, and he had no authority whatsoever under our statutes, our precedents, our procedures to make the decision whether or not to charge Hillary Clinton. That was the decision of the Justice Department. And if Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, had to recuse herself because of the tarmac meeting with Bill Clinton in Phoenix, then it was up to the number 2 at the Justice Department to make that decision. It should scare every American that Jim Comey, as a law enforcement official, decided that it was his decision. He had no right to do that. And he had no right then to trash her in his news conference as he did.
You going to read the book?
No. I don't intend to enrich him. I think he's a hot dog, and I don't intend to participate.
That's a mic drop, Karl Rove. Thank you, sir. It was great to see you. Karl Rove.
Great to see you.
Reminding people of someone's reputation.